Hello, this is Ken, and thank you for tuning in on Model Building and Retirement channel. In this episode, we're going to do a comparison. We're going to find out, does the new Gallery Kaleido water-based acrylic stand up to the finish that you get with MCW enamel? Here I always use the 2K clear coat, and with the Kaleido, I'm going to use their clear varnish. So we're going to do that right after the intro. And also stick around at the end because I'm going to reveal my secret of how I make myself small. Everybody seems to want to know that. Stick around right after the intro. Sponsored by Model Makers Workshop. Need parts for your next model project? Model Makers Workshop has you covered with the best aftermarket accessories around. And by Gallery, your one-stop shopping for all your airbrush needs. Okay, so we're back. So you might have noticed in the intro that I picked up another new sponsor, and that is Gallery, the makers of airbrushes and compressors, airbrush parts, and also their new line of Kaleido paints. So I'm really proud to have them sponsor me, and that is in addition to Model Makers Workshop, who's going to supply me with 3D resin parts. And the reason I'm being sponsored like this, or I've asked for it and agreed to it, is it really allows me to open up the content that I'm going to offer you guys. I'm going to be able to experiment with things that I probably couldn't afford on my own all the time. And it's not a cop-out like, hey, Ken's getting free stuff. I'm doing a lot of these demos to help educate you guys and give you alternatives. So, you know, I wouldn't want to have all kinds of different paints on hand and different 3D parts just to test them. I wish I could, but I'm just not independently wealthy. So anyways, I reached out to Gallery, and I'm going to be able to pass on a 10% discount too, just like I do to the 3D parts, and I'll talk about that here in just a minute. But I was looking for an alternative of paints. I love my MCW enamels, and sometimes they're lacquers, but mainly they're enamels, and I love their 2K enamel clear that I use. Problem with that is, first of all, a lot of you guys, my followers, are not in a position where you can have fumes in your house, whether it's health conditions or the wife will throw you out if you use it or whatever, because the fumes are pretty strong. Well, I have the same problem, really. I spray down in here in the basement, and I don't have any windows to vent out to. Luckily, I do have a walkout basement, so I have a door that heads outside to the backyard. So what I did is I put my booth right next to that door, and on the nice weather from like springtime to fall, I can just crack that door open and put my ventilation out there and vent to the outside. And it's working pretty good. You know, it minimizes the fumes quite a bit, but you still get a few fumes in the house. But we're getting into winter now. You know, temperatures are dropping. You know, we're getting down to 30s at night and 50 for the high. And it won't be long before it's 0 to 20 degrees for the high. So I'll have to vent indoors. And I have tried that. I have a water trough. I made a big Tupperware, not a Tupperware, but a big storage bin filled with water. I cut a hole in the lid, sealed the lid with my hose leading from my exhaust of the booth. And I put carbon filters on it and whatnot. And, you know, it's better than nothing. But when you're spraying with fumes, it's pretty overwhelming. The house really smells pretty bad. And even the garage, it's not heated. I can't go in the garage and spray either. So it's perfect timing to try to do water-based acrylics. And you may remember I did a video, and I'll put a picture of the thumbnail up here a while back, where I compared Createx water-based acrylics to the MCW line of paints. And I think I was able to show that you can get similar results, but the acrylic took a lot more work. You know, just a lot more time, a lot more effort, but you can do it. I chose to stick with the solvent-based paints because I just love the way they apply, and it allows me to move on to other things. And plus, it's very durable. But I've been watching some of my other fellow content creators doing some experiments with the Kaleido paints, and I'm pretty intrigued by it. So I'm really happy to say that I get to try it. So Kaleido, or Gallery, was gracious enough to send me a sample box So this is, this is actually not a sample box. This is their 24 automotive color paint set. Very nice set. It shows you the colors on the back lid here. Very nicely packaged. You got your 24 colors in there. They give you a bottle of thinner, even though these are supposed to be pre-thin, you know, but if it's your preference to go a little bit thinner, you can add some of that. And I'll have to dig it out of there, but there's airbrush cleaner bottle in there as well. So real nice selection of colors. I'm gonna definitely try them out. Supposedly sprays like lacquer, so we're gonna find out here shortly. And then they also wanted me to try out their Mobius TG Premium Series airbrush. It looks like a really nice airbrush. Way before I was ever sponsored by them, I used their GHAD 39 airbrush, which is like their entry-level brush, and kind of inexpensive. I think it was around $40. If I'm not mistaken, it's being phased out right now. But I get excellent results with that. You've seen my work if you're watching my channel. But they sent me this. It's a 0.5 millimeter nozzle, and it has the fan tip on it too, and trigger spray. Very nice made. It feels really good. Now, I almost wish that I would have started out with a triggered handled airbrush, because I perfected my paint with the old-fashioned across the top throttle dual action, and I gotten really good at that. You know, so now it's going to be a learning curve to go back to trigger. I don't think it's going to be too hard, but very nice airbrush. I'm going to be using that during this tutorial. And they sent me some primers and some varnish. Varnish is what they call their clear. So we're going to get into all that. I'm going to test it, and I'm not even going to use a mule. I am going to use this Revell 1932 Ford two-door sedan. It's a 2-in-1 kit where you can build it numerous ways. And I have all my parts prepped and cleaned on my bench here right behind me. Okay, and I am going to spray it with a color they call Magma Orange, which is a pearlized orange color. Looks like a pretty color, almost looks like the color of the box. So it'll look something like that. So I'm going to have all of the parts all prepped and stuff here. So let's get to the video, and we'll get going. Okay, and as I stated earlier, I'm able to pass on a 10% discount to anybody who wants to purchase anything from Galari, and I have a link in my description, and whenever you purchase, just use the discount code ModelBuildingKen. ModelBuildingKen, and that is in the description of the video. Okay, so I got all the body parts that are going to be painted the same color, all prepped, and that includes rescribing any panel lines and sanding away any mold release lines and whatnot, and then washing in Dawn Dish Soap. Now, even though Kaleido sells primers, it actually states that the colors do not require primer. So I thought I would just start off with that first. So we're going to just shoot over bare plastic that's just been properly prepped and cleaned, and no primer used. And once again, I'm going to be shooting with their K304 Magma Orange, which is a gloss pearl orange. And they state that the paint is actually mixed and thin and ready to spray right out of the airbrush. They do give you thinner just in case you need it. So I'm going to try it just straight out of the bottle, and let's get over to the booth and get started. Okay, so we're over at the booth, and yes, we're going to shoot a spoon. Are you wondering why we all shoot spoons? Well, you can buy 1,000 spoons for just a couple dollars on Amazon, and if you're going to test your paint gun, test it on a spoon instead of sporting and having problems on your actual model. So it's the reason we do that. Okay, so I am using my 0.5 millimeter brand new Mobius TG airbrush, and I'm shooting 18 to 20 psi, and at the same time I'm getting used to the gun because this has the fan tip and the pull trigger. So it's you know, a little bit different for me, but I caught on really quick. It's very comfortable. Okay, so I'm going to start out on the hood first, and I did cut out a lot of footage because people complain about seeing my wrist in the front of the camera. Sometimes you have to just manipulate the part in that little tiny booth, and I apologize for that, but I'm trying to minimize any footage that has that in it. Anyways, the very first coat is going on very light, probably about a quarter throttle, and I'm shooting 18 to 20 psi with the 0.5 millimeter nozzle. Very light coat, a dry coat. In fact, by the time I coat the last part of this, I'm able to just go right back into the second coat of everything. And one of the nice things about the very light coats too is you can really put paint into tight little crevices. If you really try to lay that paint on there, you're going to do two things. You're going to run the paint and it's not going to get into the nooks and crannies. So that light little dusting is important, and I do that for at least the first couple coats. And here I am on the body, and you also see I'm taking some light little passes right along like the door gaps to get the paint pushed right into those gaps, because especially on a paint that you're not familiar with, you want to get real light coats in all those nooks and crannies, because if you just go over it, it may separate at those lines. So. Okay, we're just about done with that first coat here, and like I said, when I complete this, I'm going to go right into coat number 2. Okay, so we're on to the second coat now, and this is another light coat, maybe just slightly wetter than the first coat, but at this point I'm really starting to like the paint. I think it's covering really well. Just taking it nice and easy and not loading it up too much. And I should add, I am wearing a respirator. However, I did take it off between coats or whatever, and absolutely zero fumes. You know, so if I was spraying my other paints, I would clearly smell that as soon as I took my respirator off. So that's one of the pluses for sure with the water-based acrylic. So Kaleido scores a 10 with the fumes. Okay, so, you know, again, this is very typical of the first coat, so I'm just going to go to fast forward. Okay, so here we begin the third coat, and here I got a little bit overzealous because it was acting like a lacquer paint, and by the third coat I would start laying it on a little bit wetter, like medium to wet coat. So that's what I did here, and I just went a little bit too wet, and I think that's user instead of the paint. You know, especially getting used to a new gun there. But I was laying it on just a little bit too heavy because it looked like it was going on really well, but when I finished all the coats here, I noticed that the paint had like a muddled look, I'm not sure how you say that exactly. And on one side, I started to see a little bit of sagging on the body, a little bit of paint sagging. So I knew that I was just a little too wet, so I'm glad I didn't thin the paint. It certainly did not need thinned. So I'm going to go to fast forward to the end of this clip. All right, now we're on to the fourth coat. So it's shooting very much like lacquer. So what I did now is I waited at least 15 minutes from that third coat, because I told you I was wet and a little bit sagging, and I was kind of worried about that. So I went and took a nice long break. I'd say I waited at least 15 minutes and got back in, and I'm probably, it's not a wet coat, I'm kind of back to a light to medium coat, I guess I would say. Just enough to get a little bit of shine on there, but I backed off quite a bit because I was really afraid of the running. So let's go to fast forward, and we'll see at the fifth coat. You may notice too that on these coats, sometimes you're seeing some extra parts being painted. I have painted those on every one of the coats. I just chose not to include them in the video to speed things up a little bit. But you want to make sure you rotate all your parts with the same amount of coats so that everything is going to have the same shade of paint. Okay, so now we're heading into the fifth coat. And at 20 milliliters of paint, I knew I was getting near the end, so I decided to keep on going to the end. So there's actually going to be a sixth coat as well. But once again, I waited at least 10 to 15 minutes before I went to this coat. But my confidence came back because that sag that I was really worried about after the third coat, it's almost unnoticeable. So drying up a little bit on the fourth coat really helped. So I'm back to a medium wet coat now. I just tuned my, I set the throttle stop on my airbrush just so it won't go to full throttle in case I have that tendency to pull the trigger back all the way. And I'm probably 3/4 to 7/8 throttle now and just moving a little quicker, but I'm laying it on a little bit wetter, as you can see. All right, let's go to fast forward. Okay, so we're on the sixth and final coat of color, and once again I'm pushing it on the wettest side that I can, so it's just about a medium wet, because, you know, I mean, I'm used to seeing shine out of the enamel even though I go with 2K clear over it, but you got to remember, if you're going to clear coat, it doesn't have to be shiny with the color, it just has to have good uniform color. So I'm not too worried about the appearance as long as there's no real problems with the paint. So it all went really well. Let's go to fast forward and I'll take it home. All right, so the base coat is done. It's been probably about an hour, hour and a half. So it's certainly not cured, but it's dry. Coverage is good. Now, like this fender here has sort of a semi-gloss sheen to it, but we're not cleared yet. This is just the base coat. The body's a little drier looking, but that was 6 coats. Okay, so I'm pointing to that little sag that developed on that third coat. It's barely noticeable. I don't know if you can see it, but I was kind of pointing it out there. I think a very light sanding is probably going to take care of that before clear coat. I mean, I'm happy with the result at this stage. I think, you know, with it not being cleared yet, it looks pretty good. The color is there. Spraying it is very much like a lacquer, so it's not like learning how to spray it. I think you have to be careful not to run it. And I think the big thing is going to be how to clear spray. So I'm gonna let this cure at least overnight. I'll put it in my dehydrator and probably try to shoot that varnish, or what they call varnish, I call clear. I'll probably shoot that tomorrow evening. Maybe some very light sanding to do first. We'll see. The only other thing I could say is once I started going with the medium to wetter coats, I did give it about anywhere from 10 to 15 minute to flash time between coats, where when I do my enamels, I only need to wait about 5 minutes tops between coats when I'm doing wet. So, you know, the patience and counting time is a little bit different for me. So I took a break, went upstairs, looked at stuff on my iPad, and definitely gave it the time. You know, instead of pacing back and forth in front of the model, which would seem like forever. So initial impression's okay. Okay, so I'm going to let that all set up and we'll be back tomorrow. I'll take a look at it. I went a little light on the roof because I know I'm going to be going either white or black with that, so I wasn't, you know, I didn't want to waste paint where it didn't need to be. All right, so after waiting overnight for the color to cure, I am back at the booth to spray the varnish and ended up going with 4 coats of varnish. So this is coat number 1, and I start out very much like I did with the color, a very light coat just to get the clear started on all the nooks and crannies and everything, and just to watch for any reactions or whatnot. So it's kind of a dry spray. This time I am using a 0.3 millimeter airbrush at 18 to 20 psi, and I believe now that the color coat probably I could have used a 0.3 millimeter there too. You know, and Kaleido even says in their instructions that it was designed to go down to a 0.2 millimeter needle. So I think my next paint job I'm going to try that for the color as well. And if you remember, I had 6 coats of the color coat, and again, with no practice or experience, I think that could be sped up a little bit. I would think 4 or 5 coats should be sufficient, but I went 6 just to make sure I had good coverage. But that little 2 milliliter or 20 milliliter bottle covered the whole paint job. I did not run out. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and fast forward, and we'll get all the rest of the parts clear coated for the first clear, and then I'll give you a brief comment as I show you the additional coats. Okay, and then here we hit coat number 2 of the varnish, and this time I increased the flow a little bit. I'm going to say instead of just light, light toward medium, kind of in the middle of the road there, and it goes a little bit quicker. It's laying on pretty nice. I'm going to show all 4 coats, but I'll speed it up in the process, not to bore you too much, but I'll speed it up right now until coat number 3. Okay, so here we are heading into coat number 3 of the varnish, and once again just increasing that flow. Now I'm into full-on medium wet, and at no point during this clear did I go to hose it on at full throttle, not like I do with my 2K clear. Okay, so we'll go fast forward until we get to coat number 4. Okay, so here we hit our 4th and final coat of the varnish, and now I've increased my throttle almost to full wet, just shy of that a little bit. And I'm just carefully, slowly making my passes and watching that light reflection in the lights there, and overlapping. Now I do notice that their drying capability of this is pretty immediate. Like when you're making your pass from the bottom of the car to the top, the bottom begins to haze by the time you hit the top, which was throwing off my mojo a little bit as far as looking for gloss. It looked to me like, oh, I missed something. I'm going to try their retarder to see if that's going to help a little bit, but it's really not important because if you're going to sand and buff afterwards, it's irrelevant. Okay, so once again, we'll go to fast forward to get through this, and then we'll take a look at it after it dries up. Alright, so I stopped after 4 coats of the clear varnish. Spray's really nice, and if you look at the spoon, for example, that's a heck of a beautiful gloss. I mean, that's almost similar to a 2K clear, almost. Now, one observance that I have is they boast that it has a rapid air technology, and I'm assuming that means that it's like a rapid flash, and that's what I'm seeing. I was able to get a really nice high gloss on the spoon. I got a pretty nice gloss on the hood, and these fender pieces, all the small pieces, I got a nice gloss on. But on the body itself, which is bigger, the one where you have to make multiple passes, you know, overlapping, it's more of a semi-gloss matte finish. Now, 4 coats of that, I'm hoping that when I let this cure for 24, 48 hours, that I could wet sand and polish that up to a nice brilliant shine. But I believe the reason for this is that rapid air technology, this stuff flashes, the very surface begins to dry faster than you can paint. So as I'm painting this side with my enamels, it stays wet the whole time. And you're watching that gloss as you're painting. On this, you start out and you can see it's a nice wet coat and you overlap, but by the time you get midway up or all the way up, you look down and the bottom is already kind of got a drying appearance to it. Not cured, not deep dried, but just the very surface is flashing. Now, the good news is they sell a retarder, which I don't have. I just ordered it just now because I think that's going to cure that problem. and probably keep that glossier. And I think it'll work more like the Mr. Color leveling thinner that I use for my enamels, where, you know, it'll just retard that drying time a little bit and allow that paint to really smooth out and flow out. Because you can see places like the corner here are extremely glossy. So we're going to see how that goes. You know, I'll give it a wet sand and a attempt to polish. So I'm going to let this cure out. I'm going to put it in my dehydrator overnight. And I'm probably going to give it 2 days before I try to wet sand. So we'll be back. Okay, so it's been about 24 hours since I applied the clear varnish, and I also had it in my dehydrator at 104 degrees for 6 hours to speed that process up. So I think that's going to be more like 48 hours of cure time. I'm also going to try a brand new sandpaper that I got, and these are micro mesh sanding sheets. It's like a cloth sanding paper. So I'm going to give that a try. I got these on Amazon, and I'll have a link in my description for it. And, you know, so this is going to be a review for that as well. I'm going to start out with 6,000 and then go up to 8,000 and finish at 12,000. And then we'll get into polishing. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut a smaller piece off this cloth. So I'm going to start with the 6,000 grit here. Wet down my panel a little bit. And I'm just going to very lightly and cautiously, I'm not even using the full weight of my thumb yet. I can hear it grabbing. I can hear it doing its job. Put it up to the camera so you can hear it. Okay, so I really wasn't liking the feel of that 6,000 grit, and it just seemed to be coming off way too slowly. So I did go back and revert to my Trizact 5000, so we're going to pick up from there. Okay, so I finished going around the entire model with 5000's Trizact, and it flattened out really nice. So that mesh paper, I experimented with the 12,000 a little bit. I think I'm going to use that in the end, but I still prefer my Trizact over the mesh paper. I like the feel of it. I like the way it cuts, and as you can see, I'm nice and flat now. And I have to say something, I'm really impressed with this clear for its durability. Because when I did the acrylics versus enamel, 2K enamel video a while back, I had a lot of issues with reactivating that Createx clear. And I want to be clear, pardon the pun, about this. I'm not bashing Createx, and I'm actually comparing all the clears, because let's face it, Createx, the paints themselves, they cover extremely nice, and they give you all the color and texture and beautiful colors. And it's always the clear coat that finishes the model. So that's really what we're comparing here. So this clear coat versus Createx is a major difference. This is much more durable. It's not reactivating. This is cured just under 24 hours, which is blowing my mind away. I thought I was getting a little over anxious starting too soon, but it worked really well. So, all right, okay, I'm gonna continue now. I'm gonna go to the 8000s Trizact and do the whole body here. I'll do a little bit on video, but then we'll cut away. Yeah, there's just something about that Trizact. It just goes on nice and smooth, and yet it's kind of aggressive, but in a good way. It's doing the job that you want it to do, but it's not so aggressive that it's scratching hard and causing, you know, a lot of extra work for yourself. All right, so now I finish with the 8000s Trizact, and it's really getting a shine back to it and smoothing out pretty good. So I am going to go with the 12000s Mesh, and then I'll go to polish. So start out with the Mesh a little bit on camera here, but then, you know, I know that gets boring, so we won't film the whole thing. But again, I took my 12000s and I cut a little strip of it here. All right, so I finished with the 12000s, and I gotta tell you, I mean, it's getting a pretty good shine here without even starting on the polish yet. Now keep in mind, I'm not even doing this. This is a rough texture here. This top is gonna be painted black, so I didn't even spray it with clear. It only got it around the edges there. But that polished up pretty good, and if you remember, on coat number 3 of the paint, I was worried about a sag that I had in this door. There is no evidence whatsoever of that sag. So you're able to recover from a run pretty darn good on this paint. I'm impressed with that. All right, so we're gonna get into polishing. And what I use it's a 2-stage. I use Meguiar's Plastex Clear Plastic Cleaner and Polish. And there's other polishes out there, or, you know, this has a mild little compound to it. Anything that's safer plastic or clear coats is generally going to be okay. I know a lot of YouTubers are using different things. This is just my personal choice, and I have a lifetime supply of it. And then after that, I'm going to finish with Meguiar's Ultimate Polish and Gloss Enhancer. And this is like a glaze. It just brings the shine to a whole new level. So I don't even wax after both of those. Don't need to. Okay, and then I apply these with little flannel swabs. Now, I have an unlimited supply of these because when I quit smoking 14 months ago, I got fat. so a lot of my flannels aren't fitting me. So I cut them up into squares like this. And I keep one for the plastics, and I don't cross-contaminate. This one will stay with plastics, and they can be washed in a wash machine or sink or hand washed or anything, but I have so many that I just toss them once they're, you know, contaminated, and I reuse them a couple times, because even if they start to feel like they got a little compound and they're getting a little stiff, you can wet them in your water a little bit. Just like my sandpapers, I didn't really mention that, but don't put your stuff down on dirty things. So I have like this clean envelope here where, you know, if I have to set this down, I'll set it down. And I do the same thing with my sandpaper. I always leave the grit side up so that I'm not picking up dust and grit from my mat. Make sure you close that lid there. And then I think what I'll do, I'll just use a little cotton swab to apply this. I'll set that over here in my clean area too. Then what I do is I take my little cotton swab here and I wrap it like around my finger. And then I just go. Now I do have a little Dremel tool that can polish, and I have like little buffing pads for it. I think it's a bit too aggressive, but if you're having trouble, and this might go to the 2K clears, you know, if you're having trouble getting little fine scratches out or whatever because it's so durable, the clear, then I might break that out. I'm not going to have that problem with this clear. Although this is very durable. I'm pretty impressed with this clear. I know I keep saying that. Can almost hear a squeaky sound once you know you've used up that compound. It'll make like a squeaky dry sound, like a dry windshield wiper on your windshield. Okay, so I'm going to continue around the rest of the model with the plastics, and I'm going to go ahead and speed that up by 8 times just to get through a little quicker for you, and we'll be right back after that. Okay, so after doing the entire model with the Meguiar's plastics and then wiping that off with the clean microfiber, I inspected, and as long as I don't see any deep scratches or anything and everything looks like it's glossing up real nice, then I move on to the Meguiar's Ultimate Polish Gloss Enhancer. That's what I'm doing here, and I'm going to apply that all the way throughout the entire vehicle and just let it all haze up before I begin to wipe it off. Okay, so that is done with the Meguiar's Ultimate Polish, and now I'm just inspecting it over to make sure it's all no dull spots. And that little run that I once had is totally gone. It's invisible. The metallic and the paint is really showing through. The pearl is. It's really looking good. I mean, I'm loving that gloss. Okay, I think it's time to really do a good final evaluation of this. So I'm going to put it on the 360 spin table with some good lighting, and we'll look for the reflection on the paint and, you know, reflection in the lights. And I'll also do a comparison with a similar colored vehicle used, painted with the MCW 2K clear. So let's get over to the spin table. Okay, so I got it up on the 360 table so we can get a good look at that paint and the way it reflects. So you can see the checkerboard pattern down the table is bouncing back up onto the door panels. Now the very top center of that roof I did not even clear because that gets blacked out. So that's why that's not gleaming. But you know, the edges of the roof are. and the rest of the car is. So we're going to do a direct side-by-side comparison with my 70 Roadrunner that is painted with MCW Go Mango enamel and clear coated with their 2K clear enamel. And I figured two oranges side by side are probably the best way to compare it because different colors do reflect light differently. So we'll have orange and orange comparison here. But I'm quite happy for water-based acrylic, and the work that it took to get here was not all that difficult. Way better than the Createx clear coat that I did on my previous video comparison. I definitely feel that this is a great alternative for people that cannot have fumes in the house. And even though I love my MCWs and I probably have about a dozen bottles of paint left, I will probably during the winter months where I cannot vent outside, I will probably go to the Kaleido paint here. And then when it's warmer and nicer, you know, I'll use up the rest of my MCW. I'll have my final thoughts right after this. Okay, so my final assessment, and let's compare both MCW and the Kaleido. So first I'll start with MCW, particularly their enamel and their clear coat enamel 2K. And the pros with the MCW is an outstanding finish, easy to spray, a very high gloss, and if you spray it just right, if you're dust free and you have it diluted and thinned just the right way, you could lay on a glass-like finish and be done without any other sanding or polishing needed. However, in most cases, that's not the case. There's going to be at least some dust or something involved, or maybe some slight orange peel. But however, it lends itself to color sanding and polishing extremely well. And I would recommend curing at least 24 hours before you do that. So that's the plus. The con is you got to use a little bit more products. I'll have a picture up here, but you got to have your color, your clear color hardener, which is optional, but I recommend it. You got to have your leveling thinner, and then you got to have, when you go to clear coat, you got to have their clear hardener, which is a different hardener than the other hardener. And then you got to have leveling thinner once again, and you got to mix all that up. It's not that it's difficult or anything, but you know, you got to use all those products to get that finish. The other con is fumes. You know, if you're spraying in an environment where you cannot ventilate very well, puts off quite a bit of fumes. You know, the solvent-based paints will just do that no matter what you try to do. In the summertime or whatever, you can open a window and vent outside and minimize that a bit. So anyways, that's my thoughts on MCW. Now, the Kaleido ColorWorks, okay, my first time ever using it, so I had no practice whatsoever. I went right to this model, just right from the get-go. And I only used the pros. Only used two products, and I'll have a picture above. It's the color followed by the varnish. I might recommend using a little bit of the retarder, but it's not necessary. I did not use it on this model at all. So that's a pro. The other pro is I was extremely impressed with the varnish that after 24 hours, which included about 6 hours in a dehydrator to speed it up a little bit, but in 24 hours, I was able to sand and buff and polish just like I could the MCW hardened 2K clear. So very impressed with that. The water did not reactivate the clear or anything. It's extremely durable. Very surprised. The other pro is odor free. So it's very safe, non-toxic, doesn't put any odors out, so you can spray indoors. I still recommend a booth. I would still recommend a mask, but you could even ventilate into a bucket of water like most people do. There's plenty of YouTube videos on how to do that to your booth, including Barbados Rex has a version of that, so search his channel and you know, you'll see where he filters into a bucket of water with filter material. Okay, so the cons. Not too many cons here, but You know, for me, painting the enamels and clear coats, I'm accustomed to being able to do that session a little bit quicker, because even when I lay on a nice wet coat with the MCW 2K Clear or their enamels, generally if it's a wet coat, I can wait about 5 minutes flash time and then recoat the next coat. Where here, once you start getting into the wetter coats, 15 to 20 minutes is the time between flashes, which is typical. It's just a learning curve for me. I've learned to just set my timer and walk away and go do something for 15 minutes, because if you're pacing the floor waiting, you're going to get anxious and want to just get back to it. But so that slows you down a little bit. Does it give you a possibility to maybe gather a little bit of dust in the meantime, but you know, you can always sand it out just like any other paint job. On the varnish, it sprayed really, really well. But I noticed that on small parts, it sprayed it flowed really nice on the small parts, like little fenders, engine blocks, grills or whatever. It flows out really, really nice. But when you're painting the body, like what you see behind me here in the picture, what I noticed is as you're making your passes and overlapping a little bit, that the dry technology they have built into that clear is very fast. Even though it doesn't cure in seconds, it starts drying in seconds. So as you're making your passes, and it looks nice and wet going on and shiny, by the time you get to the top edge of the vehicle, you look back down and it looks dry sprayed, and it almost makes you think, well, I must have missed it, or I was holding my brush too far. It's just that it actually starts to dry that quick. But you can buff and polish it out. In fact, I'll have a picture here. This is what it looked like before the sanding and buffing, sort of a matte semi-gloss finish. And then after the sanding and buffing, I brought it up to a brilliant shine. But I think, you know, they have a cure for that. They have their retarder, which I just ordered a bottle. I'm going to try that on my next paint job. I think a couple drops into the paint might just help it delay longer. Of course, you'll have to wait a little bit longer between coats, but I think it's going to level out a little bit better and not dry so instantly, because it bugs me, you know, as I'm painting, I want to be able to, you know, take a good look at it right after I paint it aside and see how uniform I was. Well, if it starts to haze up and dry on one area of that body and the other area still wet, it's kind of hard to judge where you are. But it's not the end of the world, because if you're going to clear coat, you can have a flat color, period. It doesn't matter how bad your paint is if you're going to clear over it, because you can turn anything shiny. I mean, I can paint with mud and make it glossy and shiny. So cost wise, I would say that the okay, so MCW, it's about $6 a bottle for the enamel and $6 a bottle for the clear, and $6 for the hardener for both. Now the hardener you can get maybe 10 paint jobs out of if you properly still it up, and the paints and the clears, you could probably get a couple of paint jobs out of them, maybe 2 or so. So you're talking $12 plus your leveling thinner, and maybe get 2 paint jobs out of it. So I'd say $6 to $8 a paint job. And we're talking just the body. And now with the Kaleido, it's about $3.33 for the paint per car. And then the bottle of clear varnish, probably gonna be able to paint 20 cars out of that. So I would say Kaleido's a little bit cheaper. Now, I know I just got sponsored by Gallery and Kaleido, so oh, okay, Ken's just pushing the product because he's sponsored by them. Well, I want the results to speak for themselves, so watch that side-by-side comparison that I have on the spinning table. Look at the gloss on the picture behind me there, and you be the judge. You know, I don't want to influence you. I'm just giving you my assessment, but I think the shine is what speaks for itself. So what am I going to do? Am I going to give up MCW and switch over to Kaleido? Yes and no. I'm approaching winter right now, And the Kaleido went so good on my first time out, and I think with a little extra practice, I'm going to really perfect that system. So I think during the colder months where I cannot ventilate very well, I'm going to go ahead and use the Kaleidos. And, you know, and if I get better and better and I really start to love it, then maybe I'll go full time to that period. The MCW, I mean, I've got at least 12 colors left and quite a bit of hardener and all the materials to paint. So I don't want to, I'm not going to throw that away. So when there's fair weather, I think I'll still shoot up and use up the rest of my MCW. And I may still use them. Let's say I even go to Kaleido full time. I would still use MCW occasionally if I'm trying to recreate something, if I was commissioned to do a build or recreate a car from the past or whatever, only because they have the exact color matched color codes of what the car came out with. And that's a pretty cool feature. Kaleido, if you're listening, I would recommend that you do that. If you can color match the cars, I think you're going to really improve your selling point. I'm going to make sure I communicate that with my rep there, that I think that would be an excellent feature if they so choose to do it. It's a brand new product, so I think they're adjusting for that. But they have quite a bit of colors out there, and you can mix them. So, you know, you can make your own if you're good at that. So anyways, that's my assessment. I did promise I'm going to show you a little bit of how I do my green screen, so that's coming right up. Thank you, folks. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that video, but now, as promised, everybody wants to know how I make myself small, so I'm going to reveal my secret. Energize. And it's that easy, folks. Anybody can do it. Well, now you know my secret.